really different. As soon as you got some adrenaline, throw some adrenaline into the pot and some humans, you know.
I mean, I can only imagine what that's like. We play, you know, there are some small ships and some big ships. So we play to like a decent number, but I saw a picture on your website of you playing Glastonbury Pyramid Stage, which is like my dream gig in my whole life. If I'm like 80 and I get to play that gig, I think I'll die happy. So what was that like?
It was singly the most intense and wonderful gig I've ever played. I'm from the West Country too, man. You know, like I went to Glastonbury. I am a fucking professional musician because of that stage.
Yeah.
Like I watched The Cure. My mum used to sell hippie beads and rugs and shit when I was a kid. And I went to Glastonbury as like a 13-year-old and I saw The Cure, who were my favorite band at the time, and the Happy Mondays and people on the pyramid stage. And it was like, the crush was crazy. At one point during the Cure show, a girl died for 11 seconds, was dragged out of the crowd. A helicopter landed, resuscitated her. She was fine. She survived. The Cure stopped. Helicopter flies off, and the Cure kicked back in. And I remember getting through that gig, like watching that gig, because it was my favourite band. They were at the prime. They're Boris Williams on drums. He's really fucking amazing drummer. Was the best era, best Cure records, best of the Cure stuff, best drummer, and it changed me forever. Just that gig, just the intensity of it and how good it was. And my mum was also a masseuse at the time. And about 3 weeks after that show, I came down to my kitchen and Boris, the drummer of the Cure, was sat at my kitchen table eating toast. And looking like my mum had she'd got deep tissue, great for drummers, you know that, having a fucking massage after.
Yeah.
He just had a massage in Bath because it's near Real World Studios, Peter Gabriel Studios, and they've been recording there. And I just went, I love you. I literally said that. And like, I was sitting there and I was just like, that gig, and he was like, oh, it's the best gig we ever played too. And whether that's true or not, he was
right.
Just and he gave me all this sage advice. He said, you know, just play along to stuff you like, and yeah, really. But that was that stage, and then it was things like Radiohead in '97, which was voted, you know, best gig, probably best televised gig, you know, on the BBC or whatever, and it was fucking, you know, that was everything. And you know, I saw people like Blur and just Paul McCartney, I don't know, and hundreds of little bands as well. It just seems it was church, you know.
Right.
Right. That, and then all the other fields and tents. Glastonbury was just the thing, and I could see it on the calendar. You know, it was 2014, and we'd done a bunch of big festivals elsewhere, and you know, so we were there, and it was the Ultraviolence year, so we were tight, man. There was like 4 pieces, the original bass player, or second bass player, Kevin, Blake and Byron and me. The girls weren't involved at that point, so she wasn't flanked by the backing singers. It was kind of more of a little rocky outfit. We were hitting, like, I watched back some of that stuff now, it's like, we were fucking rocking out, man. It was like, it was a little bit more like sensitive or something. Could have been that we were adrenaline and everything as well, but 2 gigs before the Glastonbury show, having had played all these blinders, like I was like really enjoying it, we had a technical breakdown in Berlin playing this huge festival. All my shit died, and like the triggers weren't quite working, things were coming out the wrong ways. It was like the drum tech, I think, had made a little errors. Original drum tech, not Will, who I have now, is a fucking star. So some weird shit had happened, and it really got into my head. I'm playing the pyramid stage. Everyone I've ever met is going to see it on live TV, and I'm going to be there weeping with the fucking chicken sound coming out of my snare drum. You know, like, just like, I catastrophized. It was like panicky shit. And, you know, the night before, and I hadn't been back to the West Country for a while, so I'm going back to my part of the world, you know, knowing Glastonbury's coming, and the gig after the Berlin show, some other weird shit happened with like the keyboard rack went weird. And I just wasn't feeling 100% confident, and the night before we were staying in Bristol, so like an hour and a half or an hour drive from Glastonbury site. And I switched on the TV Friday night, so we were playing the Saturday night, and Arcade Fire were closing the Pyramid stage. Fucking amazing set. In fact, a buddy of mine who lives in this neighborhood, has become more of a friend now, was playing saxophone with them as well. So I see this thing, sweet guy called Stuart Bogey, and I switch this thing on, and I see my field, like the Pyramid stage. Like I've been to Glastonbury 10 times as a punter, and I see this fucking huge, everyone's with the flags and the crowds, and I just went, this is going to be fine. I just suddenly knew. I was like, this is fucking it, man. And feeling really kind of emotional. And the next day, we're driving from Bristol, and I just pumped Arcade Fire in my headphones, like as we drove onto site, right? And we're driving through the mud and like onto the Glastonbury Festival site, and I'm like fucking pumping the Arcade Fire, ignoring everyone else is talking. I'm like, this is just about me, and I could just see the Pyramid stage. And we're driving through the fucking fields, right? We drive into the back of the Pyramid stage. So you're driving into like a Star Wars fucking spaceship, right? We come out the thing, and we open the splitter van, come out, and fucking Robert Plant, the singer of Led Zeppelin, is stood there, and he knows Lana. Lana's is in the car in front of us, comes out, and she's like shaking hands with him, because we'd played a festival actually with them, and we'd kind of fist bumped him, and she'd spoken to him about 2 months before, and then and I see Robert Plant, me and Blake are just like fist bumping Robert Plant, and go to and you're like, okay, if the Lord Mayor of rock and roll welcomes you into the spaceship, everything is going to be fucking fine.
Yeah.
But my little sister was my guest. We all had these VIP guests who were privy to come into the spaceship, and she was stood in the wings, so kind of directly opposite, because at that point I had my main kit was kind of side on diagonal facing out the audience, and then my standing kit was face out to the crowd, and I'm just looking up, and my sister is just weeping all the way through the show, with Lana's dad, who's the sweetheart, Rob, has just got his arm around Laura, my sister.
My God.
And it was just, and like at one point, Lana's sister, Chuck, who's like a filmmaker and a documentary maker and a amazing photographer, video maker too. She was like filming us, and at one point she just smiled and shook her head. There's so many moments during that show. We're playing some super sad ballad, like I've watched the gig back a couple of times. And I'm laughing my fucking head off with such joy. Like, we're playing a song, it's like about, despair and your heart breaking, and I'm just like, fuck. like I'm playing with the monkeys or something,
Yeah.
But it was fucking amazing. And then I was a bit more, I'm not really very active on social media at the moment. This last year it's been really good for me just to concentrate on creativity. At that point I was sort of more plugged in. I will be plugged in again, but just taking a break. And just, literally on Facebook, then I was much more active. Everyone I'd ever met and saw the gig, and was all posting their TV screens. And it was, it felt, after that I was like, well, I could just become a shepherd now, I guess.
Yeah.
Just casually walk.
That's exactly how I feel right now. It's like when I do that, I can just hang my boots up.
Yeah. We were meant to be playing it again, Glastonbury 2020. It was in the diary, man, but it got pulled.
Yeah, you will though. You will again, 100%.
Yeah, you know what? If we don't, it will also be fine, because, like I said, that was it couldn't be that good again as well, you know, like
That's literally like one of the best stories I've ever fucking heard in my whole life. Literally everything that I want like Pyramid Stage to be is literally like personified in what you've just said.
It was like being swallowed, like, you know, like an ominous fucking spaceship.
The Robert Plant thing like is what gets me the most though.
Yeah. And he was telling it like later that night in the spaceship, post gig, Kirk Hammett from Metallica was sat on the sofa there. So I'm name dropping now.
No, I love it.
But Kirk Hammett was sat there sort of talking to Lana's mum, you know, like it was like a, you know, Thanksgiving dinner or something. And Robert Plant was telling stories about Lana's dad was talking to Kirk Hammett. It's just a strange duo if you know what they're doing. And Robert Plant is telling Lana's quite straight mum, you know, she's not a rock and roller, she's a sweet, nice lady, talking anecdotes about cider and crack cocaine. And me and Blake are just, Blake's the guitarist, you know, who's a huge Zepp fan too. He's just like listening and nodding. I didn't have anything to say. I'm a huge Zepp fan. Sometimes you just want to listen to him. He was just an anecdote machine. He was happy to be that. You know? And
I bet he's got some incredible anecdotes.
Yeah, you are also thinking, I'm looking straight at the face of Robert Plant. So, you know, somebody...
Yeah.
I'm looking at Robert Plant's face, okay, and I'll just nod.
Does any of it? You know when you, like, walk out onto the stage, and for you played in the middle of the day, right?
For that show, yeah.
When does it start to compute, like, where you are? You know, like, you went to Glastonbury, like, 10 times. That was always, like... I think that's the pinnacle for any British musician. Is Glastonbury main stage. So like, did it hit you at any point that you were like, fuck, like I am playing like Glastonbury main stage?
Yeah, I mean, I was almost sick before I went on stage, fucking shitting myself, you know. But we have this group hug. It's sort of prayer in inverted commas, but there's not much religious about it. It's about kind of, let's fucking do this. And it can be any number of things. It can be Lana just talking about, I want to focus on this and that. And then one of the other guys will say, you know, let's just feel it's connect. Let's do, you know, God knows what we say. Sometimes if we're nervous, it's like gibberish, but we're having a hug, you know, having a bloody big hug. Amy Winehouse was a friend of Lana's and she'd passed away. And she'd had that historic show at Glastonbury, and Lana had mentioned having watched the Pyramid performance of Amy, I think, in one of the weeks leading up to this bit. And a friend of mine passed away at Glastonbury once, years ago. This is West Country times, nasty drugs, you know, passing around in our youths. So there was this sort of tinged melancholy with Glastonbury too, even though it's this euphoric party place. I'd mentioned that to Byron as well. You know, this horrible thing happened as well as all these amazing. And Byron in the huddle had said, you know, let's do this show for everyone who didn't make it this far. so I'm like fucking choked up, and it was just couldn't have been more fucking epic, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, you know. And then my sister weeping didn't bloody help either. Although I ended up cackling insanely with joy. So
yeah,
but it was impossible to escape the enormity of Glastonbury. But